Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for Ohio. Let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know who. Wanna go, gonna glow.
Aloha and welcome back to another episode of the Ohana Aloha and welcome back to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. That's a real great help. Where Joe and I are tripping over ourselves to preview the Saints on Monday as the Packers face off on Monday Night Football in the confines of Lambeau. The Saints literally are tripping over themselves at this point of the season. What's it called? Derek Carr is believed to be out for the rest of the season, so I believe they are going back to starting Spencer Rattler this week. Either way, their quarterback situation is a flaming bag of poo at this point, and this is a game that really does constitute a trap situation if Green Bay didn't need to win every game to really solidify its playoff standing. So I don't feel like this falls into a trap game situation, but Joe, what are your thoughts on where Green Bay stands going into this week?
Well, I was actually trying to look at this real quick because they played at Lambeau last year, didn't they?
Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say, because if I remember right, if they're playing at Lambeau this week, the last time they played at Lambeau, I was actually there, but it's not. It was last year they played at Lambeau. I was there in 2017. And that was
The
not
Hundley
fun.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I had bought my tickets before the Vikings game, or my ticket before the Vikings game, and then Rodgers ended up getting hurt.
Sons of bitches.
And I got stuck with Hundley at quarterback, which there for a bit he looked decent enough, and Aaron Jones was doing what
Hot
he did
to start that game. Yeah.
But yeah, it didn't end well. But like I was telling somebody earlier at work, there should be no reason for the Packers not to win this game. If they come out and play against the Saints like they played against Miami and like they played against Seattle, there should be no reason for them to lose this game. Now, I say that knowing they have been bitten before by the backup quarterback crap, the Tommy DeVitos and the Bailey Zappies and the stuff like that. But in every single part of the matchup, there should be nothing that the Packers should lack in compared to the Saints.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it's, and you like the one to point to, just because it's relatively the same team is the DeVito game last year and stuff, but you're playing at home this time. MetLife is a weird place to play sometimes. The wind was bad last year and stuff, and I know Lambeau it can have bad weather, but stupid wind like that Monday night game last year, that's an equalizer that just totally shifts the goalpost. It literally shifts the goalpost on the differentiator between the two teams and stuff. So yeah, I'm not anywhere near as worried about it this year. Like I said, the Saints are all but in 1-2-3 Cancun mode at this point. So yeah, and okay, we kind of mentioned this on our recap episode. We don't have our usual first day of practice under our belt going into this episode because since the game is on Monday night, the Packers are practicing Thursday, Friday, Saturday as opposed to Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So all we really have to go off of is LaFleur's Monday, but this week it was a Tuesday presser because the whole week is shifted. And like you always say, he gives us nothing most of the time, and we really got nothing this week. I guess the biggest inlet he gave us was that Jordan's okay after getting kicked in the shin, and the other one is that Bullard is moving around the facility better, which could constitute that he took 2 more steps than he did last week, or he actually looks ambulatory. So not much there. And then
did he say something like Quay and Bullard are considered week a week or something
Yeah.
like that.
And that's the thing, like with the Bullard one. And so I was going to get to, the Quay one, he sounded much less chipper about. It's like, yeah, it's the stereotypical, we'll give him the week and we'll see where he's at on Saturday kind of thing and stuff. The Bullard one was kind of funny because it was like, yeah, he's moving around better. We'll still find out end of the week kind of thing and stuff. So, I mean, we'll see. By the time that you're listening to this, they probably should have practiced or they're about to practice on Thursday, and you'll get a better idea. I don't expect Quay to practice really at any point this week. If he does get out there, I would still not take it as a sign for this week. It would take it more as a sign for his availability next week potentially. But if Bullard
Yeah,
is able
but
to
who
get out
knows?
there,
I mean, we don't really know what the injury is. It
yeah,
could have just been a sprain. It could have been, it could be anything to where, it was painful in the moment, but now that he's had a few days into it and had some
oh,
rehab to it, he could be doing
yeah,
better and, there's a shot. Now, I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying that because we
yeah,
don't know the details of what it actually is, we can't say anything to the effect that yeah, he's going to play or no, he's going to be out or
yeah. We're just guessing at this point, but
because
otherwise,
really it looked like he was going to go back in. They said that they taped it up as much as they could, but then he just couldn't get comfortable with it, and
yeah,
so he just sat. So it could be something just as simple as he sprained it, or he did some kind of tweak to maybe it was a friggin' Charlie horse. I've been getting those lately, where it just friggin' balls up, and then you can't do anything after that
yeah.
point.
Yeah, it's a weird
So
one too, because like you had all like David Chow and a couple of the other like Twitter doctor, like actual doctors that are on Twitter, and they're kind of pointing to like it might be a high ankle aversion, it might be this, it might be that. And the thing is like when he gets hit, his foot is like if it's touching the ground, it's like the last cleat on his shoe that's still on the ground. So you're right. It is hard to tell exactly what happened there, but it was enough where you can see it on the end zone replay of the next play where he just can't backpedal there. So yeah, we'll find out as the week goes on. But otherwise, it seems like the team got out of the game relatively healthy. Evan Williams made it through the rest of the game, no ill effects. Dobbs seems to have no ill effects after using the Guardian cap. And
and I
they
want to
said,
say I did listen to his presser because not to say anything, I've been working kind of on merch for the Dobbs catch and his quote of saying, "I just caught the ball" when
yeah,
asked, So I listened to that locker room presser, and it was his decision to wear the cap because he
yep,
felt more comfortable in it, and he doesn't know if he's how it's going to go going forward, but it'll be his decision 100% on the Guardian cap. So if that and I love that he also threw in a little bit that he doesn't want to make it a superstition because of he's had a good game with it on, so he doesn't want to turn it into a superstition. But that goes back to something that we talked about on the post game, that I think that was the concerning part of it, was that he wasn't sure about the concussion himself. So that's why he stayed in the protocol longer. So I think that's where the concern is, because until we looked it up, like you said, he hasn't had one since, 2019, and this could have felt completely different to him compared to anything else he's so I think the concern lies. I've seen it before. Mike, you're old enough, I'm old enough to know it. Robert Ferguson. What
yep.
happened? Darius Donovan took his head off, and then he was never the same after that. He was gun shy. He was, he would drop it if he heard feet pounding. So I just that's the kind of concern there that I had.
And like I remember, like it went so far that Ferguson he like got LASIK to like help deal with ongoing concussion issues and stuff, or like not concussion, but ongoing headache issues, or after that, or something like that. I remember reading an article where it was like, oh yeah, like the LASIK helped with not just the headaches I was dealing with, but now I see better too and stuff. So yeah, we'll see how it. Like I said, I'm not concerned yet because it is his first one in a while, but anytime there's a head injury involved, there is some in the back of your mind, there is some level of concern that goes with it and stuff, especially as the current players, they're much more aware of the long-term effects. All those studies are out there now. We've seen a lot of all-pro guys retire early, relatively early because like Luke Kuechly is one, and he suffered, some devastating ones that were pretty sad to see him, trying to get off the field after he suffered some of his concussions. And so, yeah, like you see the effect of it, and we just hope Romeo the best. That's, and Tyler Brook on the Reporting as Eligible pod, he had this really good analogy of who Dobbs reminds him of, and I know you won't care because it's an NBA player, but he said Romeo Dobbs is like Kawhi Leonard, where like Kawhi Leonard will get a steal and get a dunk, and whereas like the rest of 99% of the players in the NBA will like stunt on it and like make a face and all that kind of crap. Kawhi's just kind of like, all right, I got it. Like Dobbs had two of maybe the most impressive touchdown receptions on the season, and each time it's kind of like, okay, cool. Like for those of you who watch Silicon Valley, the guy John that does the server setup, that's like, this is your server spot. You want to see another one? This is also going to be your server spot. Okay. Like that's Romeo Dobbs in a nutshell. So yeah, but it was great to have him back out there, and he's going to be a big part of this game plan too, because this Saints team, like I said, they've traded Marshawn Lattimore. I know Lattimore has been as injured as Jair, and we can get into all that, but just like Jair, a field tilter or a field shutdown, he's a guy who can take away half the field when he's out there playing. They don't have him anymore. They have a couple guys who are more, they're solid cover guys, but they're more of the like, how much DPI are they going to get away with kind of guys than they are truly like the cover guy that like Lattimore, they've lost in Lattimore. So we'll see with that. But I think the big part of where this game is going to come down to is just like Green Bay did on Sunday night against the Seahawks, establishing the run game, because this New Orleans defense cannot stop the run. They're 30th in yards per attempt at 4.9 allowed, and 27th in rush yards per game at 100, just under 134 and a half. So I mean, start with, I wouldn't be opposed to them opening the game up like they did against Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking the same thing. That needs to be the game plan, is just keep running the ball. But really, with the defense, the Saints that are putting up, they're 28th in defensive passing yards per game, and they're 27th in defensive rushing yards per game. So either way, you're going to have success. But like I said in the lead up to the Seattle game, what I would do when you're dealing with this type of defense, let Jacobs go until they tell you, or until they finally stop it, and then you just start hitting them with play action and end rounds, and do what you did with the Seattle game, because I even called it right off the bat. I go, when the second half hit, I said that, all right, so you force the issue with the run game throughout, this much. First play I would make right off the top is a play action pass, and what they do, it was a play action pass right off the top. So yeah, that's what I would do. Just keep feeding the run, and then start getting into your play action.
Yeah, and I do think that we may see a little more play action this week, because you're back home, you're in the friendly confines, this, and this is the kind of team in the Saints where Seattle had more life to them, and they're at home, so you're expecting they're going to be able to punch back and all that kind of stuff. This Saints team, if you can get up on them early, this is not that any NFL team is going to roll over and die kind of thing, but that's how you help avoid a potential upset situation. Is take your shots early. Obviously establish the run, but like you said, first or second play, take a shot play. Watson and Love are on the same page at this point, and just try to take them deep at this point and just set the tone early. Like, yep, it's going to be another one of those days at the office for you guys to New Orleans, and just really put that in the back of their head. And it's like, I don't know exactly what the forecast is supposed to be, but it's going to be cold. They're a dome team from the South. Yeah. Uh, let's see. It's supposed to be a high of 27, low of 25 with a winter storm warning. So, like, just put the whooping on them early if you can. And main thing, just like anytime you face an inferior team, take care of the football. I know it's not rocket science, but take care of the football.
Right. And, I keep saying it week in and week out. We're into that time of year where you just need to continuously dig deeper into the playbook. Start pulling out more things, start doing more. This is another type of team that you can do it on, just because if you can this is one of those morale booster games. This is and I don't want to say that thinking that this is just going to be a cakewalk, because like I said, this shit has went south on us before, but this is kind of like a warm-up game in college. This is like when Michigan goes against Appalachia State, or Michigan or Iowa goes against Tulane, or not Tulane, North Texas. It's one of those types of games where right now, per the paper, the Saints shouldn't even match up to the Packers. Now, I know that's weird to say because it's the NFL, and only a handful of people make the NFL, and blah blah blah. But what I'm looking at is, with everything the Saints have been going through this year, and with the way the Green Bay Packers have been playing, it looks more and more like a Michigan, Appalachia State, or Iowa, North Texas type of game. So it's a morale booster. Show that these end rounds can work. Show that these flea flickers can work. Show that, triple option works, or wildcat, or, just start digging deeper into that that playbook and start having more, because we're getting to the point to where it's playoff time. And I don't know if we mentioned it, but I do believe that if the Packers win this one, they clinch their playoff berth. So even whatever, it is still an important game no matter what.
Yeah, if they win, they're in. And then after that, it's just a matter of, can you, if you beat the Vikings the following week, can you climb higher, get into the fifth seed and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's why, like I said, I don't view this as a trap game. Plus, they're just playing so well on both sides of the ball. We're finally starting to see them play complementary football. I know the Detroit loss sucks, but they were a compromised team. You're missing Jair, you're missing Bullard, you're missing you're missing guys on every level of the defense. You have no Edge Cooper, you have no Jair, you have no Bullard. Evan Williams was not playing that week either. He was concussed as well. Dobbs was out on offense. You're a little rickety on certain positions. So yeah, like you can see it. Like I do hate making too many comparisons to previous years, because this team is an isolated entity of its own, but you really do see them getting a lot of their ducks in a row like they did last year. Whereas last year it was a little bit more tense because it was almost win or go home for a lot of the season, because they had put themselves behind the 8 ball record wise. They were fighting just to get back to 500 for like really the whole regular season. Whereas this year, it's just been like, can Detroit and Minnesota lose a fucking game? But that hasn't happened. So now it's just like, just make sure you don't end up the 7th seed in the playoffs again. So, but like I said, overall they're getting healthier. You're seeing on defense that Halfley is really starting to dial in what he wants to do. He's really getting a feel of who, out of his guys, who he can just send, who he needs to send every time, who he can count on to drop into a short zone, to give a zone blitz look. He's changing up his coverages mid play, all that kind of stuff. So, and then like on top of it, Rashawn looks like he's really got his wheels going. Lucas is still one of the like top 5 or 10 players in terms of pressures created since the bye week. Kenny Clark, I can't remember if it was his post game or just like a opening week interview where he said like, this is the healthiest his toe has felt since he hurt it against the Eagles in week 1. So like you see it, like he's making more plays in the backfield. He almost had the strip sack against Howell on Sunday night. And I think that's one of the biggest corners that's been turned and you were on this for a while where it's like, where's the interior pass rush, especially when Wyatt got hurt, where it's like, for the first half of the season, it seemed like Wyatt was the only guy on the interior D line who was getting pressure. And then he got hurt. And then it was like, who's going to do it? And then now Kenny's healthy again. Wyatt is healthy again. You're seeing them create pressure. Slayton's gotten a sack here and there. Carl Brooks is starting to.
Slayton, I put on more like and I know that this is low hanging fruit when it comes to comparisons, but he's basically the Gilbert Brown. He's not really there for the pass rush. He's there for cleanup duty and take on blocks and be more your run stuffer than anything. So,
but at least he's being more Gilbert Brown than Grady Jackson, where like Gilbert would give you a little bit of juice, and whereas Grady was just like, if you come this way, I'll be here waiting for you, kind of thing and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and even the corners are. What was it that Zach Jacobson tweeted that he was doing? He was doing some kind of research and ranking of cornerbacks, and Stokes was like 18th, Nixon was like 11th, and Carrington was like 8th or something like that.
Something like that. It's like their pass defense efficiency. One of those like it's a made up combining stat by PFF, but it does take into account like their coverage, snaps, percentages allowed, and all that kind of crap. But and the reason he posted it is because we're gonna face one of these guys. Is there's a few ex-Packers who are higher on the list than the guys on the roster, but I do think that's a matter of circumstance and opportunities more than anything else. But regardless, it is good to see like, so hypothetically, if you boil it down to like, there's 32 teams in the league and each team plays 2 to 3 corners at minimum a game. So what is that, 32, 64, 96? So all 3 of those guys who are playing the majority of the snaps right now due to injury, they're all in the top third right now. And I know like not one stat can, you don't want to rely on one stat, but it is good to see that overall they're playing well. And I think it's a combination of everything. Those guys are playing better. Obviously having McKinney back there helps a lot. Williams coming back helps a lot. And then the pass rush stepping up makes the world of difference for cover guys, because it's a matter of how long you got to tread water out there, and the less time you got to tread water, the better, especially if you're without Jair. So we'll see how that's going. LaFleur didn't mention Jair at all, and I don't expect him to. They're going to, some people were saying, like, is it a concern that Jair didn't practice on Friday last week? But so we'll see how much Matt lied or not when he said, like, no, it was part of the plan that we just shut him down for Friday and had him rest and stuff. I do think it's more, that's their thing. They're like Zapruder filming all of his practice steps and stuff like that. And if anything looks a little out of order, or if he says like, hey, something grabbed, like, we're shutting it down. Because like Carlos said on the recap show, basically at this point, I honestly don't care if he doesn't play again in the regular season, so long as he plays in the playoffs. Like, that's the goal. Is like, obviously you want him to get conditioning in the regular season and all that kind of stuff, but you're not winning the Super Bowl without Jair. Like, just full, like, that's just the honest truth. Is like, it's very hard to win. You know, you'd have to win 3 conference games and then the Super Bowl. So it'd be very hard to win 4 playoff games with no healthy Jair. And that's why I say, like, come hell or high water, you've got to have him out there for the playoffs. Obviously, I'd prefer he play as soon as this week if he can, but I understand why they're treating it with kid gloves and taking it to the 11th hour and making sure everything. Because their biggest mistake to this point was letting him play on that shithole field that is Soldier Field.
Now to go back to something I was saying, I found the tweet. So it says, according or accidentally stumbled upon something hilarious and cursed. Here are a few of PFF's highest graded cornerbacks over the past 4 weeks and where they rank minimum 5 coverage snaps. Now, I will say this: I rip PFF apart. I'm not a big fan of it, but this is just what it says. So,
Right.
number 1 ranking is Kevin King. Number 5 is Shamar Jean Charles. Number 9 is Keyshawn Nixon, and 18 is Eric Stokes. And it kind of, I said it during the post game show, but I really think Stokes has turned it on, and they must be thinking the same thing because he played 100% of the snaps against Seattle, and it's not like the Seattle receivers are some kind of slouch, and you can't really put the. I mean, I know JSN got his yardage in that, but it wasn't enough to hurt the Packers. It wasn't like he ended up getting 100 yards and 4 touchdowns and the Packers lost and whatever. Now, I'm not saying Stokes is, a number 1 corner in the league or whatever, but he's shown that he stayed healthy, and B, he's shown he can hang. And I get that you can show like the Detroit film, but really even Detroit, it was just that 1 touchdown. Otherwise, he played damn well in the Detroit game. But to your point, they can't win a Super Bowl without Jair. They need their top corner, and I'm just glad that they have guys opposite of Jair now. That when Jair is out there, we don't have to completely worry about the other side of the field.
Yeah, exactly. That's really the key for me too. Is like, it just allows Halfley much more flexibility with what he wants to do. And, you know, I'm really glad that Halfley has evolved some. He's not just going to soft coverages anymore. And obviously, I do think that the improved pass rush helps with that a lot and all. But it's just night and day with how effective that group is going. Obviously, you hope that Quay can come back, because just that boost of athleticism that you get from having him and Cooper out on the field, it really does raise the floor of this defense. So hopefully Quay can come back sooner than later. But just excited to see, and that's the thing too, is like, this should be a good Cooper game, because this Saints O line is such a tire fire right now. Like, there's not much good to say about it. You know, I don't know what the rankings are, but you've got a rookie left tackle, Lucas Patrick, who I'm sure the Packers know how to take advantage of, and Trevor Penning, I think, has been. I'm just so glad, like, he didn't end up on the Packers. I was worried that he would be a pick and stuff. So a lot of guys that Green Bay should be able to, you know, kind of take advantage of, and realistically, Cooper should have a good game blitzing the A gap if that's the route Halfley wants to go this week. So, especially with Kamara in question, because I haven't seen an update on whether he's expected to play or not, but that injury that he has is going to bug him no matter what happens out there. So, I do think that we'll see a lot of Cooper just flashing across the screen come Monday night. So excited for that. And like I said, they're starting Rattler. So you're getting a rookie quarterback who has a propensity for putting the ball in harm's way. So this could be a pretty exciting game for the defense. And it's a matter of often, we said it all season, like take care of the ball on offense. And that was really the only time that the Sunday night game got interesting is, Jordan took good care of the ball all game, and then Jacobs has the one fumble, and it's like watching the replay, it's like, dude, put the fucking ball in the outside arm and stuff like that and all. But that was really the only time where you kind of had to clench because at that point, Green Bay was up 17. They had potentially were in plus field because I think they were at about midfield and picking up some momentum on the drive and stuff. So just take care of the football and make the most of your opportunities when they come your way on defense. And this defense has this year, there's it's been a growing experience for all of them. Like I said, I think Hafley has done a really good job adapting to life in the NFL as a defensive coordinator and missing some of your best pieces, and really glad with the progress he's made with that unit so far.
Yeah, I was just looking at the Saints injured reserve. I blanked on the name of it for a minute, but Taysom's out, Bub Means, Chris Olave. Yeah, those are some big names right there. That Adebo,
Yep.
Heron, DeMarco Jackson. Those are some big names that they're missing on it. And I don't want to give them credit, but Jimmy Christensen said something kind of smart kind of good the other day on Matt Ramage's show, that if you're starting Marquez Valdez-Scantling as your number one receiver, you're in trouble. And that's pretty much true. And especially when you don't have anybody legit to throw to him.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, like I said earlier in the show, this should be a no doubter for the Packers. But you got the any given Sunday type thing, and you've got the Packers who have floundered against lesser talent before. So hoping for everything. As long as we come out healthy with a victory, clinch the playoff berth, call it good.
Yep. Exactly. That's the big keys that you're hoping to get out of this game. So yeah, I don't have too much more for this one. And obviously, like I said, try to hit some big plays. I do think this could be a big game for Watson because he was missing from the game last year, and they did miss his speed against this team. The Saints like to play. I know Dennis Allen got fired, but they like to play a lot of press man. They like to have their corners in your face and stuff. And without Lattimore, without Adebo, Kool-Aid McKinstry is dealing with a neck injury, so yeah, and Teron Matthew and Will Harris are they've been good safeties, but they're both older than us. Oh no, different Will Harris. I'm thinking of a much older Will Harris, but yeah, the Teron Matthew is our contemporary at this point. So yeah,
older than everybody on their team by like 3 years. Cameron Jordan, Demario Davis are both 35, and they're the oldest ones on the team. And Matthew is 32.
I keep forgetting he's younger than me. God damn it. Because I feel like he's been around forever.
And then Derek Carr is 33. So, yeah, fuck you. Fuck all these guys, But yeah, it's they don't have the mix there, and I know they've been in cap hell for a long ass time. So I think they really need a reboot and just start all over.
Yep. And it's going to be rough for them because yeah, their routes to getting out of um their routes to getting out of cap hell are because it's something like I forget what they have to. They're like $70 million over the cap right now. Like if you took a time machine and flash forward to the season opening, the new season year for 2025 in March or whatever, they're already like $70 million over the cap, or say it's something stupid. So yeah, like there, and you're seeing like you said, this is the crunch where it comes crashing down on your head, where it just all, the house of cards is, it's like perpetually in collapse because Breeze hasn't been there for a couple years, and yet they're still in this hellhole of a cap hell, which is astounding. Because really, when Breeze left, you should have just done whatever you had to have reason. They tried to kind of win now in the medium and stuff, and well, like, I'm not going to complain. It's to Green Bay's benefit this season because it's a NFC win that they should be able to bag. And I know that everyone's like, oh, don't count your chickens before, but we're not on the team, and we can have expectations of what these guys should do. So yeah, I'm
We're at
expecting
least
a win.
really realistic. We know
Yeah.
that there is that chance that something happens and the Saints can pull off a miracle or whatever. But we are also realistic to know that the Saints aren't what they used to be.
Yeah.
And it's not like we have a Brett Hundley starting at quarterback right now, and you know seventh string corners go on defense and that. So yeah, I think we're good to put a ribbon on that one.
Yeah. So what's your over unders for this week?
Well, I tried to do the smart thing and have a friend of mine look up the stuff on his gambling sites, but they don't have anything listed. So now I got to go off the top of my head again. So, but I think we're going to go fairly simple ones just because, well, for one, it's easier to do, but just because it's hard to gauge against the Saints, against a team like the Saints right now. So we'll go over under. We'll put the average at 200.5 passing yards for Jordan Love.
Ooh, I'm going over. I just think that they're just going to have too much, and I think the Saints will be faster to try and plug up the run than what Seattle did. I think that's going to be a big difference, and it's going to open up some big play opportunities for Love in the passing game.
I'm thinking over two, but I have a feeling this is going to be one of those games that he's going to get a good chunk of yardage, and then they're just going to go right back to the run game. And I would love to see him get a 300-yard passer, but I have a feeling he's going to hit like 225 or something, and then you're just going to see the slow down, and they're going to go with handing it off to Jacobs and Wilson, and if they get too far up in points, then you'll see Malik come in and do some handoffs and shit like that. So I'm going to go over, but I just have this feeling he's not going to get near 300. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, it's funny you say the whole slow it down thing, because like you look at Green Bay's stats, and one of the interesting ones is like you think, yeah, and we talked about how, like, do they need to run the ball more and stuff. They're actually running the ball more often than they're throwing it. They rank 31st in pass play percentage, so they're the amount of time they're under 49% passing the ball, and then they're 31st in passes per game at just over 28. So like, as much as we kind of like wrung our hands at certain times this season, like they need to run the ball more, they actually have. And I do know that part of it is, it's carryover from Love's injury earlier in the season, but the numbers really do bear it out. And you can see it, Love's only on pace, and granted, he missed like 2.5 games, but he's only on pace for like 3,600 yards passing or whatever. So, and hey, if that's the magic elixir for this season, I kind of said it at one point in a tweet where I'm like, go be the 2003 Packers where you leaned on Amon Green, let Jacobs be your Amon Green light in a sense, because Amon was just superhuman that season, and play off of that run game. And I do think that it just accentuates what this team does best, and it kind of helps to, you control time of possession. It keeps your defense off the field more often, and you can just kind of squeeze down the game and stuff. And obviously, if you get into it, you can get into a track meet because you have the weapons on offense. But also, if you need to control the pace of the game, you can, which is something that a Green Bay team hasn't done in a long time.
I mean, I know he had 1,883 yards, but you got to think Josh Jacobs is getting pretty high up there too, because I know he's at least over 1,000.
Yeah, he's got 11, like just under. He's at
1,147.
yeah.
So, and he's averaging 4.3 per attempt. What's he averaging per game? Yeah, it won't give me the stat, will it?
I think it's like 70 yards a game or something like that.
Receiving yards per series. So, but I mean, yeah, you got to. I know you said Amon Green light because Amon was superhuman that year, but really, what has Josh Jacobs been? He's been friggin' superhuman for the Packers this year too.
Yeah.
So he may
He's
not hit that
redefined how
1883 mark.
he's just redefined how they operate on offense. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, he may not hit that 1883 mark, but he's going to hit something. So we'll just stick with him over under. We'll put it at 80 and a half rushing.
Weirdly, I'm going to say under because I think they're going to kind of try to limit his touches this week with the Viking game next week, and also with the big picture of we're almost, we're like 99% in the playoffs. And so you've gotten us here, and we need you in January, kind of thing. So I get the feeling this is a game where obviously it can change depending on how it goes. But if they take control of this game early, like I expect them to, I think LaFleur would be very happy limiting him to like 15 carries.
I think Josh Jacobs would choke him out if he tried to limit him. So I'm going to go over just because I think Josh Jacobs has his groove. Josh Jacobs is happy. He's having fun. I think unless he gets cramping or tweaks something, that they say, okay, we're not going to take any more risk with you. You're sitting your ass down, and we'll duct tape you to the bench if we have to. I'm going to go over. I think he gets 100, hits the 100 mark this week. So we'll stick with, or we'll go move to defense, and we'll just go over under 3.5 sacks for the defense.
I'm gonna go under because I think they're gonna just try and get the ball out of Rattler's hands really fast. Like this could be a 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi offense for New Orleans this week. So not because that group is gonna underwhelm, but more because I think New Orleans is gonna try and protect Spencer Rattler in that sense.
I'm going to go over because you pointed it out, and I was thinking the same thing. Their offensive line is weak as hell, and I think they're going to get to the point where, because we don't know what Kamara is going to do, if he's playing or if he's not playing. If he's not playing, that's going to hurt him even more. So they're going to have to rely a little bit more on Rattler. So yeah, I don't know if they're going to hit the 7 mark like they did against Seattle, but I think they'll hit 4 or 5. And that's all I got for you.
That's good. Yeah. I mean, I don't have too much more to say about this one. Yeah. I just think this one is kind of a straightforward, just go get this 11th win. See what you'll know what that's the thing too, is like Green Bay might know they're in the playoffs by the time this game kicks off, because it is funny hearing the scenarios, because everyone's like, you win or you need Atlanta and one of the Rams or Seahawks to lose. And so with everyone listing it that way, and obviously you list it that way because it's like you do control your own situation, you win and you're in. But the hilarious part of it is like Green Bay will know where their standing is because all the other games will have played out by the time they kick off on Monday. So that side of it is funny. But like I said, I don't view this as a trap game, because you're still clinging to the hope that you can catch up to the Vikings and pass them for the fifth seed, and you don't want to get backdoored into the seventh seed, because like, and I don't think it'll happen, because the Commanders still have to play the Eagles. I think they play Dallas one more time, who's a little frisky still at this point. So I do think that they'll end up in the seventh seed, or someone else may very well end up there. But, you know, be that as it may, like we said earlier, this team is playing good football, continue to get incrementally better each day, each game, because that's what you're building for. You're building for January and February. So, anything else, Joe, you got for this one, or we'll put a bow on this one already?
I think we got to put a bow on it because I really didn't pay attention to any social media stuff this week, so I can't even do that much. And really, it's been quiet because the Packers have been fairly successful. So there's really nothing to that can be
Lambast or
complained
complain.
about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. No,
So yeah, I think we're good.
sounds good. Well, that's going to do it for us. We want to thank you for joining us for another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. Please check out the website, ohanapackers.org. Our writers are putting out more posts on a weekly basis. Check out the shop, purchase some merch, as Joe mentioned, and I've been mentioning. Anytime someone makes a great play, Joe is going to figure out a way to put it on something, and this one is um, it's Romeo Dobbs with the ABCs on how he caught the ball. I caught the ball, and we're so that's definitely what I'm going to get at some point, because I love Romeo. But please support the channel that way. Support us. Coffee, mugs, t-shirts, sweaters, hats. You want it, we've got it.
Or if you just
So
want stickers, I've got stickers over there too,
there
and
you go.
magnets, car magnets, and stuff like that.
It's all there. Your one-stop shop for Ohana Packers. Please follow the podcast on your social media apps, at Ohana_Packers on Twitter, at Ohana Packers Edition on Instagram. Just search Ohana Packers Edition on Facebook to find us there. Please follow the podcast on your favorite podcasting app. Give us a like and a subscribe if you're enjoying what you're hearing. And all of your comments, please give them to us so that we can create the content you're looking for. The Packers go into for now, their final primetime game of the season. They're at least
Yeah.
not going to be in.
Did you see? And I don't know how well of a report it is, but was it the Minnesota that they're already telling the Minnesota stadium workers to be prepared to move time slots?
Something like that. And it would only be to shift from the noon game to the later slate, because the Sunday night football game got reflexed already. And I know a lot of people were upset about that. They're like, why? But it's because the league is banking on, like, the Vikings and the Packers are both going to be in the playoffs, whereas that other game, I think it's the Falcons and somebody. And I know it's a shitty game, but it's under the pretense of one of these two teams could be playing for their division, kind of thing. Whereas, like, the chances the Packers and Vikings are at that point is pretty slim. So yeah, I'm not a fan. The best game probably would be the Vikings and the Packers, but the league doesn't look at it that way. They're looking for the underlying storylines and all that kind of crap. But so this Monday night game will likely be the last primetime game until they play. Every playoff game is a quote unquote primetime slot. But until then, we'll do our recap But till then, that's Iowa Joe. I'm Mike. Go Pack Go, and aloha.
Green Bay hustle, grind it up. Hit the field, we don't bluff. Touchdown dances, feel the love. Jordan's got that MVP stuff. It's time for be up, let's go. Packers bringing that show. It's time for you know who.